Good morning from Mexico and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So I wanted to start a playlist on YouTube where I give you guys some stories about my life with my husband, both prior to him being deported and now in Mexico. So the first story that I want to talk about is something that actually came up on my live on TikTok. So just so you guys know, before we get into all of this, you can always follow me on TikTok at Laurita70, on Instagram at _Laurita70, and you can also email your stories and questions to me, but don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and drop your questions and comments below. So the story that I want to tell you guys is the day that I was legally married to my husband. Now, my husband was picked up, and as you've seen in the previous video, I explained how he was picked up. When he was picked up, he was held in a local jail until ICE came to pick him up. And this was in a small town, and I was on the phone with countless attorneys from the moment that I got the call that he had been picked up. And one of the things that all of them told me was that getting legally married to my husband, because we had been together for 13 years, he had proposed 4 years prior to him being picked up. But one of the things that they told me was being legally married to my husband would give me legal access to information that was happening with him while he was detained and in ICE's custody. Now, they were 100% right about this. And so I immediately got to work on making sure that I could solidify our marriage legally before ICE moved him, because I had no idea when it was going to happen. And if you guys have been in this situation, you know that they don't ever tell you when they're moving your spouse or anything like that. They keep all of that very secret. And so I knew that I only had, I was basically on a time clock for it. So what I did was I contacted the facility that he was being held in. They were extremely nice and very easy to work with. They told me what I needed to do. And so I set out on this journey, and 3 days, 2 to 3 days, I think, after he was picked up was when we were legally married. And that process, what I had to do was I had to talk to the judge in that town. And so I had a meeting with him. He was an amazing person. He was really great to work with. And he went with me to the jail. And we had to have it approved by the jail. They were very quick about it, though, given the circumstances. So the jail approved it. He went with me to the jail, and we were in the visitor area, which if you've been in any kind of holding facility or jail before, the visiting area is separated by windows, and it has phones on the wall, or at least this one did. So it had phones on the wall, it had windows, and there's seats on one side and seats on the other side. So when we got into the jail, the judge and I were on one side, and my husband and a deputy were on the other side. The deputy acted as a witness, and we went through the ceremony. It was very quick, but the judge was very nice, and they didn't let us physically touch at all. I couldn't hold my husband's hand. I'm going to try to do this without crying. I wasn't able to hold my husband's hand, but, and I remember the judge making a comment, and he said, "You're not even going to let him hold hands?" Because he was just as shocked as I was. And so we were married, and we were given a 30-minute visitation, because it wasn't a day that they were doing visitations. We were given a 30-minute visitation. And so my husband and I were able to sit and talk afterwards. And then once the visitation was over, I went to the local county clerk and filed for my marriage license. My husband and I had talked a lot about what we envisioned our wedding to be. And when we were in the States, prior to this happening, my husband pushed really hard for me to go to school. And so that's what I did. And we couldn't afford to do much else. We were still building a life. And so we had talked about having our big Catholic wedding and a big party with our family and friends. And I remember standing. I remember standing across from my husband. And I remember him saying that he was sorry. I remember him saying that he was sorry for the way that we had to get married. And I remember telling him that it didn't matter and that the most important part was that we were going to be together no matter what happened, and we were going to figure it out. Prior to that, I remember, because I was fairly new to Catholicism at the time, I remember sitting down with our priest, who was just an incredible person. And I remember telling him, if I do this, can I still have my big Catholic wedding? And of course he told me yes. And so in the live that my husband and I did together on TikTok, a lot of people asked if we were planning on doing a wedding. And we are planning on doing a wedding. But first we're focusing on building our house. And so every bit of savings that we have right now is going towards that. And so we're not there yet, but we'll get there eventually, because part of being in this situation, and one of the hard parts of being in this situation, is trying to rebuild your life after something like this happens. But my husband tells me all the time that if we did it once, we'll do it again. And so there will eventually be the wedding that we always imagined. It won't be anything too crazy, obviously, but it'll be ours. But I think that this is an important story to tell, because I don't think that people realize some of the things that we go through as families with our spouses and our partners when something like deportation affects us. So that's the story of how I married my husband. And it isn't beautiful, and it's not a fairy tale, but I think the part for me that I always remind myself of is that while that part of our story isn't like a fairy tale, there are a lot of parts of it that are, and they're just beautiful. So, to anybody out there that's going through this, just know that you have an entire community behind you, and you aren't by yourself. And I hope that what I'm doing here will help shed light on what happens to our families. And I want to make sure that our families are seen. So thank you for listening to my story, especially while I cry. And I will have more story times. I'm going to call them story times now. I'll have more story times for you guys as we go. But if you have any specific questions, or you'd like to hear anything in particular, please drop a comment below. Let me know. I'd love to hear from each and every single one of you. And don't forget to subscribe. So everybody have a great rest of your day, and